Hello, my wonderful, wonderful friends, and welcome back to r/IDoWorkHereLady, where people who work at places are mistaken as not, and the stories are really, really entertaining. Guys, I hope you're having a lovely Saturday today. If it's not Saturday, I hope you're having a lovely day in general. And in this episode, I've got 5 stories for you. The first was emailed to me by a subscriber, and it's about the time he worked for his dad's company and he was mistaken as a robber. The second story is another subscriber submission, and it's about the time OP's boss put a Karen in her place. It's always fun hearing about those. And the third is a story where a bouncer does not let OP go to work because she believes that OP is just some drunk punk trying to cut the line. I hope you stay for the stories today and do hit that subscribe button for future tales. Guys, let's dive in. This first story is titled, I Do Work Here, How Do You Know My Dad? My dad owns his own company that's contracted to do a lot with big communication towers. They're usually hired by companies to install these giant towers, install or remove antennas or communication boxes, troubleshoot issues, and you get the gist. I started helping out during summer break throughout high school, and when I graduated, I was hands-on full-time through the week and then in school on the weekends. Of course, there's some work I couldn't complete because I needed to be certified for, but there was a surprising amount of things I could do while on site without these certifications legally. A lot of the times I was doing some manual labor while the lead technician I was partnered up with would work on the more technical stuff with the towers. On one particular job, the lead tech and I had gone out to a site in the middle of the boonies that happened to be on private property. It was a big old farming ridge, and it looked like they had all sorts of animals and crops that I saw as we drove through. The dispatcher had called the property owners ahead of time to let them know we were coming, but had left a message on their answering machine. It's pretty routine stuff. We also recently went through a bunch of changes with our work vehicles, and the truck we were newly assigned did not have the company logos on it yet. It was a sparkly new white Ford F-150 in our possession now. On site, there was a fenced area with a large tower and a little shelter or shed beneath it. One of the machines inside the shelter was showing some error, so the lead tech was going to go troubleshoot it. Now, the fence wasn't locked, as the access to the tower and the shelter were locked. My job was to clean up in and around the shelter and make sure things looked physically well and nothing was out of place. While I was inside the shelter checking the fire extinguisher certification date, I heard a loud bang outside. Both the lead tech and I jumped, looked at each other and peeked outside, and we were greeted by 7 horses in the fenced area surrounding our truck and the shelter. I saw one particularly large horse right next to our truck. The passenger side door was totally collapsed inward, and I had the pleasure of watching the horse turn, stomp angrily, and buck the truck again with all of its might, forcing it to rock to the side real hard. The lead tech looked at me, smiled, and said, "Good luck," then went back to work on the machinery inside. Since I was not the most experienced, it came down to me to herd these horses out of here. So, shutting the door behind me, I spent the better part of an hour acting like an idiot trying to get the horses out. After I got most of the horses out, I had one left who was this pretty brown-spotted horse that seemed pretty calm. They all had bridles, and this one just stood there and let me come up to pet it. I took it by the bridle and started to lead it out of the area gently. Right when I got near the entrance of the site, I was greeted by an angry, gruff-looking man. He came up angrily to me and shouted, "Hey, what the heck do you think you're doing?" Still holding the horse by the bridle, I said, "Hi, I was just trying to get the horses out. Are you trying to steal my horse?" "No, sir." I let go of the horse immediately and told him that I'm from ABC Tower Company. "We're just doing some site work." He replied, "There's no way a kid like you works there. You're trying to steal my horse." I told him, "No, the horses just got into the area, and I was just trying to lead them all out." He started screaming and saying that I was trespassing, that this is private property, and he grabbed the horse and led it away from me. I replied, "Sir, I understand that this is private property, but we contacted the owners yesterday explaining that we'll be on site today." He shook his head at me and said, "No one called us." "I know George, the owner of ABC Tower Company, and no one called." "You are trespassing. Get off the property, or I'm calling the police." I said, relieved. "Oh, you know George? That's my dad. He knows I'm out here. You can call him if you'd like to verify." The guy said, "You only know his name because I just said it," gesturing away again. He said, "And you're too old to be George's son. That kid is like 12. Take your truck and get off the property now. I'm calling the police." Thankfully, the lead tech heard the commotion and came running outside to my rescue. He recognized the farmer and helped defuse the situation. When he confirmed that I was in fact the son of the owner, the farmer scanned me up and down, laughed aloud and said, "What? No way you're George's son, you're too good looking." The farmer then apologized for how he reacted to me and said his wife likely took the message but didn't pass it on. As a bonus, the incident report I had to fill out regarding the damage the horse did to the truck was fun. Safety had a hard time holding it together when I had to explain to them that a horse decided to take out the side of our truck. That farmer was right to be suspicious of those guys. Horse theft is a really common thing and has to be stopped. I'm kidding. I don't know if it's common, but I do know people steal horses. And if you're in Florida and you steal a horse, you can face up to 5 years in prison. I don't know if that's true or not, but my grade 5 teacher told the class that, and that's pretty much the only thing I remember from her. Horse theft. This next story is titled, "You Can't Fire Me, I Own the Place." So, I used to work at this computer laptop repair shop inside a shopping mall. Listening to these stories reminded me of a good one. It was a privately owned store owned by a really great guy who was about in his mid-30s. We dealt with all sorts of people along with a myriad of computer issues, but this story really stuck out to me. So, this lady, a Karen type, had come in with her older model laptop saying it was running really slow and sometimes would randomly freeze or shut off. I took her info, told her that we'd look into it, and I'd give her a call with more information later. Like most devices that come in, this one was neglected, and we always made a point to check the physical hardware before booting up the computers. It was no surprise for us to find an abundance of dust, hair, crumbs, and even dead insects inside the laptop, and Karen's laptop was disgusting. Upon opening it, a pungent smell of cigarette smoke immediately filled the room, and I could see the disgusting dust buildup around her fan. One of them wasn't even spinning properly because of the dust caked on it, plus some sticky stuff which I'm assuming was a drink of some sort that basically formed a glue and glued the fan to the plastic around it. Definitely found the overheating problem. After that, I turned it on and ran some scans to see if anything else could be causing the slowdown, and found her problem. Long story short, she has 8 gigabytes of RAM in her laptop, but one RAM stick decided to fail, which is common. So she was only running on 4 gigabytes of RAM. I won't bore you with the details. I called Karen, left a message notifying her that we found the overheating issue and found the reason why her laptop was slowing down. I also told her she would have to buy another 4 gigabytes of RAM to get things running up to speed again, and if she would be okay with it. The next day in the early afternoon, it was me and my boss working. I was helping someone else when Karen came in. My boss says hello, got her information, and brought the laptop out for her. This is the conversation that happened next, pieced together by what I overheard and what my boss told me. Boss man explained to her that the random shutdown issues was caused by the amount of buildup inside the laptop and that it would be best if she kept it away from dusty areas and made sure it was used on a clean surface like a table rather than on a pillow or in bed on blankets. Karen brushed him off though and said, "Okay, but is there anything else that's causing it to slow down in the computer itself?" My boss said, "We left you a message yesterday. We found the problem to be a memory issue, and you'd need to buy a new stick of RAM." She started to get impatient and said, "I thought you were calling for me to pick it up." I didn't check the message. I missed the call and just assumed you were calling me to come get it. Bossman hesitated a bit but then said, "Oh, well, if you have some time, you can wait a few minutes, and once you buy the new memory, we can install it, and you'll be good to go." Karen complained that he was just trying to get her to buy hardware to make a sale. So, my boss booted up her laptop to show her the system was only reading 4 gigabytes of memory, and as it was loading, Karen made a little quip about the speed again, but the boss ignored her. He explained to her what he was doing, what memory does for the computer. When Karen started to complain about how slow he was, she says, "Can't you do this any faster? Ugh, you should have done all of this yesterday when I dropped it off." My boss replied, "I understand your frustration, but we left a message yesterday for you, and we can't just install new parts without your permission, just in case you don't want it or you want a second opinion from somewhere else." Boss man had the patience of the gods, I swear. As they waited, I heard her start tapping her fingers on the counter and tapping her foot on the tiled floor. It was very obvious that this woman was antsy and impatient and just wanted out of there. She seemed to be the type that expected everything to just get done at the snap of her nasty, bony little fingers. She then rudely said, "How do you guys run a business with the speed you guys are going at? This is insane." At this point, my customer looked right at me, widened his eyes in disbelief at how awful this lady was, and I smiled at him, silently communicating that whatever he was thinking, I was agreeing. Boss man replied gently, Well, we try to be as quick as possible, but we try to pay attention to details, so that can take time. Karen rolled her eyes and nonchalantly mumbled, "Unacceptable. If I owned this place, you would be fired. There's no way you'd work here for me." And I'll never forget this. My boss looks at her and says, "Well, ma'am, I do work here, and there's nothing you can do about it. As a matter of fact, I'm the owner of this place, and as such, I must inform you that due to your behavior, we will no longer service you or your device." He canceled whatever the laptop was doing, closed it, and pushed it at her across the counter and said, "I wish you a good day. Please leave my store." Karen did this loud, incoherent noise, says she wasn't planning on paying for the extra memory anyway, grabbed her stuff and quickly exited. Right after she left, I heard my boss mutter under his breath some swear words at her. My customer and I laughed out loud, and we were very glad the crazy lady was gone. Oh Karen, I'm still trying to wrap my head around why she didn't listen to the voicemail and just assumed it was a call for her laptop to be picked up. It also must be really nice to be able to fire customers and refuse to serve them. The next story is titled, "ID Please, I Work Here." This happened 4 years ago when I was starting my senior year of college. I started working at this really popular bar at my university as a cook, fresh out of a crappy catering job. It was the beginning of the school year and thus the beginning of college football season. I was ecstatic because I had just turned 21 a week after I started there and got free drinks as well. As dumb as that statement is, it's important later. About 3 weeks into the job, our college had their first home game, and as usual, the entire university is absolute pandemonium between traffic and everyone and their mother, heading for the restaurants before the game. My shift started after the game, so I started heading to the bar around that afternoon. Remember when I said the bar was popular? There was a line of like 16 or 18 half-drunk college students waiting outside the door to get in while a bored-looking security guard took their IDs. Seeing as how I was new there, I wasn't sure what to expect on game day or how busy it was. Normally, I would just use the back entrance to get into work, but the entire back lot and the back entrance was blocked off to be used as a party area and dance floor, so the front entrance was my only option. I started making my way to the front entrance to walk through, and all of a sudden the guard stopped me. This woman had that permanent scowl of someone who doesn't get paid enough to deal with drunks, along with that attitude. The guard says, "Where the heck do y'all think you're going?" I replied, I work here. My shift's startin'. Nice try. Now get in line." I told her, "Ma'am, I'm not kidding. I actually work here. You got any kind of ID or badge that proves it?" Probably worth noting that I didn't even have a uniform. The cooks wear t-shirts over their regular clothes. I sighed and handed over my ID. The guard says, "Okay, you're 21. Still ain't gonna let you skip the line unless you prove you work here." Me, getting irritated, said, "Look, can you just give the manager or something so he can prove it? I really need to get to work." The guard replied, "You see this line? I ain't going anywhere. If you want in, you're gonna have to wait in line." At this point, the students are getting ticked off at me for supposedly holding the line up, and I'm getting ticked off because I can't even go to work without being late, and I was running out of options. That's when I realized I was late, but that turned out to be my saving grace. My manager, Chris, called me around that moment. Chris said, "OP, are you almost here?" I replied, "Oh, actually, I'm here, but security's not letting me in." I was staring at her the whole time I said this. Chris said, "Give me a sec." And he hung up and came outside a second later. He chewed out the guard for not even attempting to check with him to see if I was telling the truth and making me late, and he got me into the bar to start working. Chris and I had a good laugh about me getting carded to go to work and the fact that this would have been a lot more complicated if I didn't turn 21 a couple of weeks before. Good times. This story is titled, "You're Just the Receptionist. You Can't Fire Me." When I first achieved my qualifications on occupational safety and health OSHA, I was working for a company that specialized in commercial building steel construction. I actually started out as a receptionist at the company. Then I was the sole female safety officer. For context, we have a male safety manager, and I'm the safety officer, and we both had been with the company for over 7 years. With my experience, I see a lot of people come and go, but also have seen a lot of the same faces. People tend to stay within the industry even if they hop different companies. So, someone that we may have known through another company might end up working with us or vice versa. This is the story about one welder, Ben, who used to work with one of our subcontractors for years and would come into our shop often and see me working the front desk as a receptionist. He recently picked up a full-time job with us. Between when I last saw him and when he worked with us again, which was over a year in some, I got my certification. I was never very close with him. In fact, I did not like him. He was the typical work out of town in the boonies type guy who blew all of his money on drugs, alcohol, and escorts with no respect for anyone, and he was a notorious practical joker. His practical joke is actually what led me to submit this story to Fluff in the first place. One day I was on the shop floor reviewing some plans and cross-checking what had been completed so far. Ben had been working with us for maybe a few weeks. I hadn't seen him since I'd been working out of town. This also meant that Ben did not know that I was now a safety officer and no longer a receptionist. I was walking around when I suddenly heard the overhead crane working. I glanced over and saw no steel being moved and didn't think anything of it. Now, I understand that not many of you will understand what I'm talking about, so I'll try my best to paint a good picture for you. We have overhead cranes in our shop that are used to move giant pieces of steel from one end of the shop to the other. The shop we work at often deals with 30 to 60 feet long I-beams, which weigh about 50 to 100 plus pounds per foot. The length of a 30 to 60 foot beam can be upwards of thousands of pounds, depending on the thickness, etc. To move these giant steel beams, we have these giant lengths of thick chain attached to the overhead cranes, and you're to wrap the chain around the beam to lift it. You have to be extremely careful to make sure the weight is distributed properly. Otherwise, when the steel is hoisted, it can slide to one side and fall, risking injury, damage, or worse. And the number one rule when using an overhead crane is to never crane dangerous loads around anyone, and to never ever crane anything over top of anyone. The reason being is that we as humans are soft, fleshy things, and a 5,000-pound steel beam is, well, 5,000 pounds. You ever squish a bug? That's pretty much us if a beam that heavy were to fall on us. Of course, the chains are usually rated to lift about 15,000 pounds, and most of the times will not fail, but can't be too careful. After a few minutes, I saw that Ben has rigged up a 60-foot-long beam and was running it down the length of the shop. Being a dumb practical joker he is, as he was driving the crane down the shop, I saw him deliberately crane the beam over to where his jokester buddy was working and stop it directly 10 feet above his head. The CO worker did not see that Ben was coming as he had his welding helmet down and was welding. I then heard Ben yell, "Hey!" When the guy looked up to see what he was yelling about, Ben then gave the guy the middle finger and laughed, signaling the CO worker to look up where the 5,000-pound beam was dangling above the guy's head. To give some perspective, I was about 200 feet away from Ben on the other side of the shop, and I would have screamed for him to stop being an idiot. But being in a steel shop with everyone wearing earplugs and sounds that exceed 100 decibels, I doubt Ben would have heard me telling him to stop. I quickly ran to where Ben was standing and shouted at him, "Hey, are you serious? What the heck do you think you're doing?" He noticed me and did this dismissive hand gesture and said, "He's fine. We do this all the time. Relax. No one's hurt." Ben laughed me off. I was appalled and probably showed how appalled I was on my face and said, "I'm going to have to write you up for this and talk to management about possibly dismissing you. Doing things like this in a shop is unacceptable. You know there's a zero tolerance for horseplay that can endanger co-workers' lives." What I told him is absolutely true. At the shop that I work at, if you're goofing off and can potentially hurt someone, it's immediate grounds for dismissal. The owners actually take it very seriously and have terminated guys for way less over the years. Can't risk any lawsuits. As soon as Ben heard me say that I was going to talk to management about dismissing him, he said, "Calm down. It's all right. We're just playing." I told him I'm going to have to report him to the owners and let his fate rest in their hands. He then said, "You don't have any pull to have me fired. You're just a receptionist. You go back to doing your office job and let me do mine. Look, if you don't tell the safety guy or the foreman about this, after work I'll take you out for drinks and dinner." He actually said this to me as he winked to his KO worker buddy. I didn't want confrontation or to go on a power trip saying I do work here as a safety officer blah 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 because I needed to keep my cool and remain professional. I said, "All right then, deal." As I was walking off, I heard him and his buddy say, "That dumb receptionist chick should mind her darn business." I couldn't take that snide remark, so I walked up to them again, pulled out my little wallet, and held up my safety officer certification card, and Ben's face went white. I didn't say a word. I went directly to the foreman's office and called him meeting ASAP with upper management, saying that Ben was endangering lives of a CO worker in the shop by joking around. I told him about the dangerous stunt he pulled, and then we reviewed the shop cameras. The owner was appalled at what he saw. I'll never forget the time. 11:40 to 1 a.m. was the time this happened, and 12:30 p.m. the owner called Ben into his office and fired him. I was in the shop area talking to the foreman when Ben comes stomping out of the office area to collect his belongings. He did not even look at me. I've dealt with a lot of safety officers on sites over the years, and you kept your cool in the situation, so kudos to you. If you guys don't know, in a few of my videos I've mentioned that I work in steel construction. I started as a welder, moved on to welding supervision, and I'm now doing quality control and inspection. So what'll be described actually happens all the time in steel shops. You have some guys who come into shops that have no regard for anyone's safety, and a lot of the times they're canned almost immediately. So I have a little story I want to tell you guys. So I'll never forget this one time my boss saw a CO worker do something dumb that he was fired on the spot. If you guys don't know what an overhead crane looks like, I'm gonna probably post a picture. So he was showing off to a new guy, saying that he can ride the chains on the crane to the very top, which is like 30 or 40 feet high. He basically lowered the chains enough so he can put his legs in, and he sat on it like a swing, and he rode the chains up about 15 feet when the owner comes walking out of the office doors and yells at him to take his stuff and go home, and we never ever saw him again. I have so many stories about dumb people who I worked with. This next story is titled, Apparently I'm a Fake Security Guard. Before I started my career in law enforcement, I had a gig as a security guard for a mall for a couple of years, and believe me when I tell you that I have stories for days. But this story is about one time I got to take down a psycho lady at the mall. For some background, I'm a 6-foot-tall male that's relatively lean. When I wear a security uniform, I don't necessarily fill out properly, but whatever. Since I was a kid, I've always wanted to become a cop, and because of this, I've taken martial arts for most of my life, particularly jiu-jitsu. And with this training, when I get the chance to take down a person, I must say it's very impressive. Okay, so back to the story. My partner and I were making our rounds around the mall, but as he went back to the security office for something, I got a call about a disturbance in one of the bigger department stores. I can't tell you what the department store was, so I'll just say it rhymes with Sears. When I got to the front of the store, I saw a middle-aged lady who was berating the cashier. This lady was hollering at the top of her lungs about some nonsense regarding a final sale item that she was trying to return. Surrounding her on the floor were packages of chocolates, candies, socks, things that were usually kept up near the tills as a last-ditch effort to get customers to buy more things. This lady, in a fit of rage, had thrown things around like a toddler with a tantrum. Upon approaching, the manager of the store sounded like he was reiterating himself, something along the lines of, "Ma'am, our store policy is that you cannot return these items because you've used them. Plus, they were final sale. There's nothing we can do for you, so we must ask you to leave." She says, "No, I want my refund. I have to return these. They didn't fit me." This lady shrieked and stomped her feet. She stomped her feet. "Excuse me, ma'am," I said authoritatively. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. You're causing a disturbance." Her, being appalled, said, "You can't kick me out. You don't work here." I was beginning to tell her that I worked with mall security when she says, "Now you're getting scrawny kids in costumes to try to kick me out." This lady made a weird gesture at me and the manager, ignoring my presence some more, and she said, "Someone get me real security. I only wanted a refund, but now they're discriminating against me because I have a reading disability." I almost laughed out loud because of how quickly the situation was escalating, and it seemed like this lady was now grasping for straws. While she was complaining, I heard in my earpiece that my partner was on his way, which I was very thankful for because I didn't like to deal with these situations alone. And I said, "Ma'am, please, you need to leave the property now." "No, not until I get my refund." The manager started to say something again, but this lady just lost her marbles and started to chuck things at him, like the stapler and the debit machine, and then went to knock over more things from the counter. I stepped in and tried to grab the lady's arm to stop her. She screamed like a dying cat, went to put both of her grubby little hands on me to shove me, which was a big mistake. As was our policy, if a customer attacked us, we could restrain them, so I did. It wasn't hard. This lady was all of 5 foot 5 inches and maybe 130 pounds. I was able to pull her away from the counter, knock her off her feet, and pin her on the ground in a split second. My partner had shown up to witness this last little bit and was calling the office to call police. We cuffed her to detain her and waited until the police showed up. They ended up arresting her for causing a disturbance and for assault because that stapler she threw hit the manager in the mouth and drew blood. All while this happened, the lady was still yelling about her refund, how I'm not a real cop and couldn't arrest her, which was true, but I could detain her. The The lady was also charged with resisting arrest because she tried to fight off the police that came and arrested her. My partner and I always joked that she must have been on drugs that day. So if you're curious about the items that she wanted a refund for, it was for underwear, 7 pairs of underwear to be exact, and it was very obvious that she had worn them. These tales left me with a lot to consider, so let me tell you my opinion. I absolutely loved the first story, I Do Work Here, How Do You Know My Dad? It's hilarious how the farmer accused the kid of horse theft, only to realize he's the owner's son. I think the farmer's suspicion was justified in a rural area, but his age guess was way off, and that too good-looking quip had me cracking up. It reminds me how assumptions can lead to awkward confrontations, and kudos to the lead tech for stepping in. The second one, You Can't Fire Me, I Own the Place, is pure satisfaction. I admire the boss's patience with that entitled Karen, explaining the laptop issues calmly before dropping the mic as the owner. I've dealt with rude customers, and firing one on the spot? Chef's kiss. It shows why owning your business rocks, no tolerating nonsense. ID please. I Work Here made me chuckle. Imagining a 21-year-old cook getting carded to enter his own job is peak irony. I feel for the guy, but the security guard was just doing her job poorly. The manager's intervention was spot on, highlighting how new hires often face silly hurdles. The fourth story, You're Just the Receptionist, You Can't Fire Me, is empowering. I respect the safety officer's cool professionalism. Flashing that certification card after the welder's sexist dismissal was epic. Safety in construction is no joke. That crane stunt could have killed someone. Firing him swiftly was the right call, proving underestimating women backfires. The quick aside on dumb steel shop antics reinforces that. Riding crane chains? Insane. People like that deserve the boot. Finally, apparently I'm a fake security guard is action-packed. I applaud the guard's jiu-jitsu takedown on the tantrum-throwing lady. Detaining her over worn underwear returns was justified, especially after assaulting the manager. It underscores how security gigs demand quick thinking and restraint. And that brings us to another end of our I Do Work Here Lady. Guys, if you enjoyed the stories, do hit that thumbs up button. If you missed the last episode of I Do Work Here Lady, if you haven't seen it, check it out, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you all.